Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Julianne from Razorleaf Corp. Hope you're all doing well today. Welcome to our Tech Tuesday for our February edition. Today, I'm joined by Milan Obradovic and Rodney Coffey, and they're from our Aras team here at Razorleaf. And today, Milan's going to take us through the release 30 for Aras Innovator. He's going to show us some new highlights and show us a demo as well. A couple of housekeeping notes is we are going to record this webinar and we'll be posting it up on our website in the next 48 hours or so. We'll also send an email to everyone who registered with the link. Also, if you have any questions, make sure you put them in the questions panel and we'll get to them right after Milan concludes his demonstration. Okay, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Milan.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Julianne. Everyone, welcome back for our Release 30 Tech Tuesday. Should be a good show today for everyone. So as usual, we'll get started with our agenda. First things first, we're going to get started with really what's new in Release 30 and the key things that we want to focus on today to kind of show and tell. After that, we're going to go through some kind of a new addition to Tech Tuesday as important releases. So not only information about the Aras releases, but also other releases from the partner community. Alongside that, we'll do our normal Q&A. We'll do a little bit of a preview for the upcoming ACE conference next week. And then following that, we'll do our usual wrap up. So to begin, what are the notable things that have come out with Innovator Release number 30? The biggest thing, something I mentioned last Tech Tuesday, is the addition of conditional field rules on responsive forms. The one sort of limitation that was evident with the release of responsive forms was you're able to add fields, but they weren't able to do the things that classic forms are able to do. Maybe write rules to have a field disappear dependent on other fields and so on. So that's an exciting new addition to responsive forms and something we'll be able to show a pretty good demo of today. Alongside that, to expand on responsive forms, they're now able to be displayed in the preview pane of search grids. So for those of you that like using that preview option on your search grids, your responsive forms are now able to be displayed there. And then for those of you who are custom developers, the iOS and Android software development kits are no longer going to be provided as of release number 30. However, those for .NET and COM are still going to be available. All right. So before we begin digging through the rest of the slide, I just want to give a quick review of really what responsive forms are and kind of what we're going to be taking a look at today. So let me dive into my Aras environment a little bit earlier than we're used to. So as a quick review, responsive forms within Aras are forms that are sort of designed to adapt to different devices and different screen sizes. And this is especially useful for those of you who maybe are using mobile devices on the shop floor and want their users to be able to access, or if you want to access Aras from a mobile device. So when I tend to grow and shrink my window size here, we see that the fields will automatically adapt to this. And then when we take a look, say maybe a classic form, if I were to shrink my window down like it'd be on a mobile device, I'd have to go and use a pesky scroll bar to find all my proper information. So these responsive forms, they're also a little bit different from our classic forms. So if I hop into an editor really quickly, let me actually close out my tabs. So if I were to hop into my responsive form editor, we can do a quick sneak peek of really how these forms are built. So versus classic forms where I would manually drag and drop fields and have to use XY coordinates to move these around, responsive forms allow us to go into our editor and if I wanted to add a new form in this open container, I can just drag and drop that field directly in there. With responsive forms as well, the formatting, the size of the fields, it's not necessarily based off of inputting a standard amount of pixels. It's now based off of containers. So if I wanted to morph the size of my part number field, my revision field, state field, and so on, I could select one of our containers, one of these columns, and I could modify the ratio that's available to us. So if maybe I want my part number, revision, and state to be a little more compressed, I can boost my ratio up and push those fields down more and more to the left. So the fact that our fields and our columns and our containers are all based off of these ratios rather than a standard pixel allows the form to sort of maintain its formatting, even if I were to say expand or contract the form view, the fields are going to maintain their same, they're going to take up the same amount of space on the screen that is available to them. So another thing that I wanted to highlight before we get into the rest of the demo is sort of the difference of how, actually, sorry, we'll take a step back. We'll pick up on that actually after we go through a few more slides. So really, the next thing I wanted to move into Aras, I figured I'd give you guys a little bit of background first before I jump right into it, is also the difference between how rules are configured with classic forms and this new responsive form designer. So the biggest thing here is the new rule configuration that's available to you. So through this new rule editor, admins are able to configure our form fields to be hidden, viewable, or read-only based off of specific identities that are logged into the system. So per se, if there's a external user, supplier coming into your system to access, your part items, we can hide forms based off of that identity. If we are, say, having in this example, say we have a field for a vendor on our form. If we're making this product in-house, wouldn't necessarily have an external vendor for that product. So if we set our make by to make, we can automatically hide our vendor field through this rule configurator. A big plus to this, for those of you who maybe aren't the strongest developers, would rather do things as point and click rather than type code, no code is now required to make these modifications. So if I wanted to have my vendor hide on make by, it's as easy as selecting that property, that field, selecting my other field and setting it to hidden. Another nice piece of the rules configuration is that these rules are stored as items in the system and are reusable for other responsive forms. So if I have multiple classifications of my part form that, maybe I have a software part, a material part, and some other classification, I can reuse these rules on all of those other parts as long as on all of those other forms, as long as those same properties are on that form. Another thing to highlight, obviously, is the form preview. We won't really get into that as much. It's really a nice convenience feature. But once we build these responsive forms, those will be available to be seen on our search grids. All right, so before we hop back into Aras, I wanted to do a quick versus comparison. So specifically around rules and dynamic forms. So when we're taking a look at a classic form, these forms can morph based off of selecting a specific classification, which is something everyone who's gone through configuring solutions has been able to sort of see as a low-code tactic for making forms change. Or if we wanted to, say, make our form change based off of another field, we'd have to write custom JavaScript in order to make that change happen. So if I were to modify my make by, I would have to write a method to find that field, find that property. When it's updated, let's go get rid of another field or make it visible. So the plus side of that is it really is more flexible. If you're a talented developer, you can really make your forms do almost anything you want. You can modify styling and make one field impact 30. So classic forms definitely win when it comes to flexibility. But when we're taking a look at responsive forms, we're able to make these forms morph based off of pretty simple conditional statements. So if this field is this value, let's hide, make it read-only, so on. The downside with responsive forms is it's not as free-flowing as, say, writing custom code. So as of now, only singular conditions can be applied to a form. However, multi-conditional statements are going to be coming on the roadmap. So we're still continuing down this road of expanding what responsive forms are able to do. But the big plus for someone who doesn't really like to do development, isn't great with JavaScript, there is no code to create this form behavior. So let's go ahead and hop back into our Aras environment and sort of take a look at what it took to build something like this JavaScript-based form versus our, responsive demonstration form here. So I set up sort of the same behavior on both of these forms. So if I wanted to, say, make an edit to this JavaScript-based form, we see when make by is set to by, the vendor is available to us. So when I set that to make, it'll automatically disappear. And the same thing goes for our testing form here. So right now I have my component set to buy. If I select make, my vendor goes and disappears. So the same functionality really, but the key difference is kind of how difficult or easy it is to configure and set up this behavior. So when we're taking a look at our forms here, so the first one I want to take a look at is our non-responsive form. I kind of want to take a look at what steps it takes to make this field behavior occur. So on my make buy form, we have the ability to set specific field events. So something that'll watch that field when something changes, when something's selected, it'll cause a method to run. So when that field changes, I have written a pretty simple JavaScript method here to specify the behavior of that field. So when make buy is set to make, we want that vendor field to be hidden, if else it's going to be visible. When it comes to setting up our responsive form, do a quick switch for that. Setting up this behavior is as simple as creating a new rule, specifying that our condition is looking for the value of this specific property, aka make buy, setting an operator, so we want an equal, not equal, is greater than, less than, so on. If we have our make buy set to is and make, it's as easy as adding behavior, selecting a property on my form. In this case, I already have vendor configured, but we can go ahead and configure another one. I can say if make buy is make, let's go and set our cost property to be hidden, normal, read only, and so on. So another thing that the new responsive form designer allows us to do is set up our fields and our forms to morph based off of which identity is currently signed into the system. So for example, we have an identity-based rule here. And in this case, the condition, we can specify that we don't necessarily want to look for a field, we want to look if the current logged in user is a member of an identity. So through this, we can specify that we want this to be a member of an identity. And if this identity is all suppliers, we can select fields to disappear, move to read only. If there's a user we don't want necessarily editing this information, we can add this new rule. So when one of our suppliers is logged in, we see that we were able to hide our state, our cost, if it's currently going through a change, the vendor we're getting this from, the make buy decision, as well as setting our description to be a read-only property. So in order to quickly demonstrate this, I'm going to go ahead and log out. There we go. Go ahead and log out. We're going to sign in as our friendly demo user, Mike Miller. Now Mike here has been set as a member of the all suppliers identity. So when Mike goes and searches up parts and looks for our testing component, his form goes from, I can build that example. His form is going to go from this fully fledged testing form with all of its fields available, and it's now going to remove those fields from view. The data is still there, but since I'm a user from all suppliers, I don't have access to everything that's here, and my description field now is read only, and I'm unable to modify that field here. So one last note, just to kind of cover all the release notes here. I do want to show the preview pane really quickly. So if I specify that we want a form preview on all of our components here, we see that our classic forms are going to go ahead and be shown. If I pull in my testing form, my testing item here, we see that the responsive form appears, and it also maintains that same conditional rules that were set up for the identity here. So Mike, being that member of all suppliers, is not going to be able to even backdoor his way in and find a cheeky way of getting all the fields available to him here. So with that, we can sort of hop right back into our deck. and move on to the next portion of our presentation here. So this is where we want to cover, one, the important information about Aras releases that are upcoming and have come before, but we also want to cover some of our partner releases as well. So one of our key partners here is Essig PLM. They create connectors for Aras to connect to various CAD systems. And Essig releases new versions of the connector usually once a quarter. So if, say, release 30 came out this quarter, they'll have a new connector release for 30 the following. So the recent releases that they've came out with in the last quarter, one being connectors for PLM 10.6, that's going to be supporting all of the Aras versions from 14 to 29, obviously previous to 30. And really the key feature here, they actually did a really, really good webinar here, is providing the functionality to convert a PLM BOM into a CAD assembly within the CAD platform. So if I had child components of a top level assembly, if those child components had CAD underneath them, I could go into an action within Aras and it will automatically open up, say, Inventor and build out that assembly. Essig has also continued to support Innovator 12, SP1, all the way up to 18 with their 9 series of connectors. These aren't as fully fledged as the new 10 plus connectors, but it's continued support, continued bug fixes, and continued really support. So with that, I'll move on to our releases that are reaching end of life for Aras. Really no major updates on this slide since our last Tech Tuesday. All versions of 12 SP18 really are now past their end of life date. So if you're currently running a version older than 12 SP18, or really 12 SP18 or older, feel free to reach out to us at Razorleaf, reach out to Aras, get into the upgrade queue so we can move you on to a newer version. And sadly, constant reminder of how long Tech Tuesday has been going. It's a big positive. But our first release that we covered on Tech Tuesday, release 14, will be soon entering its end of life date, May 2024. Keep in mind that with being on release 14, 15 plus, you are underneath the new Aras release structure where these upgrades are really more self-deployable. So if this is a case where you need to upgrade from 14 to say maybe 30, once again, get in touch with Razorleaf, get in touch with Aras support, let them know that you still have an intention to upgrade, and they'll kind of give you some documentation to help you help walk you through the process and sort of give you some guidance there. All right. So sort of covered this on the last slide, but really what does end of life mean? 30 months after an Innovator release, that release is now end of life. And when we are reaching end of life, that means that Aras really does not have the obligation to provide support for that release. So if there's any bugs that are occurring that are really on the platform, there will be no longer any hot fixes released for that. Support will be lesser as well when you're on an end of life release. All right. So with that, we can move on to our Q&A portion. Does anyone necessarily have any questions over what was covered today before we move towards our ACE preview and wrap up?
Thanks, Milan. Yes, we do have a question, a couple of questions here. First one here from Angela. Regarding the new form editor, I right now use a lot of custom JS, which I'm assuming is JavaScript, and CSS in my forms, especially for high custom add-ons, like adding custom elements in the form and appending them to other elements. Is something like this already possible in the new feature?
Yeah, so when it comes to responsive forms, what's really possible through the rules editor is really what was shown today. There's plenty on the roadmap in the future to allow styling to be modified and so on through conditional statements. But if we're looking to have custom HTML running or CSS, I would recommend to stay on the classic forms. There's really no immediate push to move into the new responsive form editor. So if there's things that are currently not available through responsive forms, feel free to keep using whatever you've built so far.
Okay, great. So another question, what is the leading reason I would want to move to the new responsive forms?
Yeah, I think, well, first things first, if you're working in an environment where some of your users may be working on a desktop, some may be using Aras on a mobile phone or a tablet or something with smaller screens, really that's the biggest plus right now to responsive forms is sort of that adaptability to various screen sizes. So yeah, if you have plenty of users running mobile, responsive forms would be a great call. Alongside that, if you're someone who's sort of new to Aras, not a very experienced admin with a lot of development experience, responsive forms would be a great call on, really building these things easily. I would almost compare it to working with something like a 𝙀𝙊𝙍𝙍𝙀, building a custom website, just dragging, dropping things into a container. Really, the learning curve on building a responsive form is pretty simple. And as this rule editor gets more and more in depth, it'll sort of empower lesser power users to start building some really cool custom forms.
Okay, great. I encourage you, if you have a question, just plop it in the questions panel and we'll read it right off here. Okay, we've got another question here. What is the significance of the discontinuation of the iOS and the Android SDKs?
Yeah, so this is for those of you that are building external applications. Like, we have some people in-house at Razorleaf that love tinkering with building Android or iOS apps to communicate with Aras. As of now, the significance is sort of up in the air. So with Innovator Release 30, the documentation still makes some references to these SDKs. I don't believe that they're shut down per se, like you're not able to use them with Release 30. But I will say, definitely get in touch with Aras if you have really any more questions about more deep development. But as of now, I think if you're running iOS apps, Android apps based off of these SDKs, you should be in decent shape for now. That's the best I can describe.
Okay. Great. Let's see, one more question here. Is it possible to control the styling of individual fields based on rules?
Yeah, so that's sort of in line with Angela's question earlier. Yeah, this is something that's on the roadmap. As of now, they're sort of incrementally increasing the functionality of the responsive form editor, and adding the rules engine at all was a big step. So within the next few releases, it is in the roadmap and something that will begin to be made available probably within the next few releases. But as of now, it's purely read-only, hidden, visible for our forms.
Okay, another comment here from Angela. I have seen in the release notes that there is a small bug fix regarding editing items at the same time. Do you know anything more about this?
Yeah, no, this is definitely something that I've ran into poking around building demos, and sometimes I tend to push Aras to the brink. So yeah, I've definitely experienced the bug before, but really no major insights past what was provided in the release notes.
Okay, great. All right, any other questions? Just give it a few seconds here, see if anyone else has anything. Okay, I think that covers it, Milan.
All right, awesome. So if you guys think of anything else for the rest of the presentation, feel free to throw them in. We can cover them at the end. But at this point, we're gonna sort of do a little bit of preview for the upcoming ACE conference. So the ACE conference is gonna be held next week in Fort Worth, Texas. So that's a pretty exciting location, first time in Texas for me. But really, what can you expect when you're attending ACE? So really just a few simple bullet points here based off of my experience last year and some of the insights that have been provided by Aras. First, you're going to get some really great keynote presentations from not only the Aras leadership team, but also members of the community. So the community being partners, the community being power users and admins of their own Aras environments, their experiences with implementation, configuration, how they have tackled the task of customizing versus using out of the box. There's always some really great knowledge to be gained from these keynote presentations. Alongside that, there's going to be some really great hands-on training sessions from the Aras team. So whether this being learning how to use some of the new functionality that we've covered in the last few Tech Tuesdays, such as reporting, responsive forms, and so on. It's also going to show you how to use some other things that have maybe been around. There's plenty of opportunity to ask questions. There's always some live demo sessions where you can sort of poke and prod and get to see what you want to see out of Aras. Then a really fun part of the conference is the rapid fire demonstration session. And this is where everyone from the partner channel, including us, has the opportunity to demo some really cool functionality they've built using Aras. So quick teaser, we're going to be demonstrating our Aras to Teams integration, which is a pretty cool way to keep your team in the loop whenever they have a new in-basket task or new notifications from the system. So alongside this, Julianne, I'll kind of let you cover what we have planned for our subscribers around dinner and so.
Sure, we do have one more question in though, from one more thing. Will we get a new open release this year?
We haven't gotten any indications of that so far. That's probably something that'll be covered at ACE. And if you're not able to attend, that's something we'll for sure get covered in the next Tech Tuesday.
Okay, great. And yes, we are hosting a dinner for our subscribers. So if you have not received an invitation, please send me an email, julianne.grant@razorleaf.com, and we can add you to our list. But we're having a dinner on Monday night after the initial opening reception from the Aras conference. And it's literally right across the street. And we hope to see you there. And we'll also have a booth at the Aras exhibit area. We're going to be very close to the Aras booth. I think we're in booth 9, and we're located in one of the end panels, so on the closest side to Aras. So we hope to see you guys there. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. So to kind of close with a little bit of wrap up, really what do we have coming in the future around Aras and marketing? Obviously, from next week, we've got the Aras conference in Fort Worth. So like Julianne said, we're going to be pretty close to the Aras booth. So if you're there, feel free to drop by. You can meet our normal cast of characters at Tech Tuesday, along with some of our other Aras experts and consultants. But alongside that, our next Tech Tuesday, we're currently plotting for June 4th. That's going to be covering Release 31. There's going to be some interesting things around configurable web services that's currently on the roadmap, things around search enhancements, and then once again, continuing improvement to this responsive form editor. So for those of you attending ACE, hopefully I get to see you, get to meet face to face. And if not, hopefully we'll see you at the next Tuesday.
Great. Thanks so much, Milan, for your presentation today. Thank you, everyone, for your participation and your questions. If you have any more questions, we'll be happy to answer them offline. We'll be sending out this recording in the next couple of days. All right, everybody, have a great afternoon. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.